So, Drew, I'm going to begin a place that you normally are not, Instagram. I recently posted that you were joining us for our studio coverage of Sharks, and somebody actually replied on there. Her name is Christina Marlowe.
Oh, the great Christina Marlowe.
Yeah, so you are familiar. Okay.
I don't know who Christina is.
It's the actual Christina, and all she said was, Drew, exclamation point, exclamation point, exclamation point, exclamation point. There were 6 of them. And I responded, I said, you didn't need that many exclamation points, all right? But here's what I'm getting to. Her final comment here, I thought, is a conversation point. She said, I disagree. He's not only a great guy, I learned the rules of the game from his broadcasting during Sharks games when Patrick and I were first dating. I didn't know an icing from an offside. He'd explain why plays were good and bad, what they could have done, and he was never afraid to criticize when appropriate. In fact, I'm going to add a few more exclamation points, and then she put about 14 of them here. I just want to know, going back to your beginnings as a Shark broadcaster, forget being a coach, did you ever realize like the responsibility you had in this market of, quite honestly, teaching people the game?
Yes, and it wasn't that I was really ahead of the curve on that. It was George Kingston, who was the very first coach of the Sharks. One of the things that we did the very first year was we did a couple of these things called Break the Ice, where companies would come out and we would put the people on the ice and I would take them through a practice. You know, some people never skated before,
right,
and never known the game before. Elise Soul, who was working in our Sharks Foundation at the time, she was from New York and she could skate. She was a really good skater. Like at the time, a better skater than most of the guys we had on the team at that time. But George always maintained that we had a responsibility to help build the game and grow the game and to teach the game. So George was the guy that put me above to make sure we did that all the time. And we went out as coaches and we did that. We did Sharks University, where we just held classroom stuff. And the one thing that I always thought about when I started broadcasting was, and this was again with George, why? You got to tell people the why. It's like coaches will tell you now that you have to tell players the why. You used to be able to tell players, just go do it. But now they're more sophisticated, they're smarter, and so are fans. Fans follow, especially hockey. Hockey's a game that you have to follow.
Yeah.
You have to watch it. So I did have that in my head all the time, that I had to teach the game, teach the game, teach the game. And one of the actually disappointing things about broadcasting in Canada is that the people you work for don't put that emphasis on it. They don't think you have to do it as much. And that was one of the things that was really hard for me to get around in Edmonton. But yeah, so, long story short, yes, I did. And that was all because George Kingston always put it in my head. We are here in a new market, a non-traditional market, and to help grow the game, we got to teach the game.
You mentioned being in Edmonton. Obviously, we know that's where you were working the last several seasons. And then even there was a stint, years before that when you were part of Hockey Night in Canada and the CBC's national production. So you have left the Sharks for various different capacities in various different times over the years. This is not the first time you were away. But there's one thing I know about you over these years when you haven't been in California and in San Jose. You can't quit the Sharks. Like you could never stop watching, stop paying attention, stop texting about them. Why? I mean, wouldn't it have been easier? I've been in jobs that I left or that I wasn't part of. I moved on. And I say this respectfully. Why did you never move on?
You had me at hello, basically, with the San Jose Sharks. Again, George Kingston hired me for that job when I was with Hockey Canada. Came to San Jose, fell in love with the Bay Area, fell in love with the people, fell in love with the fans, fell in love with the team. Everything about it was a dream for me. But the reason you can't quit the San Jose Sharks is because of the people that you get to work with. I can go through that office and there are people, Brody, that I adore. I can go on and on about who they are. I mean, there's just so many. Yeah. And then I, get to work with Randy. I get to work with Danny. I get to work with Bakes. I get to work with Hetty, now Brownie, Curtis Brown, a good sketch, Unity sketch. Okay, we'll leave that alone.
Yeah, it's on the side.
Yeah, maybe. See, you've had to endure that. I just watched from afar. There have been a lot of times. I was fired as an assistant coach in '96 from the Kansas City Blades, which is our farm team.
Mm-hmm.
That was my first exit from the San Jose Sharks. Came back as a broadcaster when Patrick Marleau was drafted and came to the San Jose Sharks. Came back as a broadcaster, purely going to get back into coaching. That's what I was going to do. I was going to use the San Jose Sharks radio job to network my way around the National Hockey League. Had 3 or 4 interviews. Barry Trotz was one guy. He was starting Nashville. We talked and talked. And every time we talked later in the year, he kept saying to me, "You like this broadcasting thing, don't you?" And I thought, I do. I really do. Did the broadcasting thing, moved to TV. You have kids, you have young kids, your wife who's, and all of a sudden it's like you're away from home all the time. So came back to do Hockey Night in Canada. And between you and me, hated it. Absolutely hated it.
You would think, though, that is the pinnacle job for a hockey broadcaster, right? You would think.
Yes, it was. I'm sitting there the very first night in Edmonton, as a matter of fact. I'm working with the late, great Don Whitman. Don Whitman is a legend in Canada, great broadcaster. And I'm sitting there, and he can see it. I'm like this in the press box in Edmonton. And Don turns and looks at me and goes, "You all right?" I went, "What the hell am I doing here?" And he went, "I got you. It's going to be okay." And I went, "Okay." So we broadcast the whole year. And Don and I do the series Calgary versus Detroit.
Mm-hmm.
And we are in, what Calgary's like, that press box. Okay. So we're going into overtime in game 6. And there's no restroom in the press box. So you got to go use the public one. This sums up my career at Hockey Night.
I thought you were a man of the people, but anyway, proceed.
Anyway, so we go into the public bathroom.
Uh-huh.
We are relieving ourselves. When you're anywhere, but you can feel somebody just staring at you, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I can feel somebody like drilling holes in the back of my head. I finish up. I go to wash my hand. This semi-drunk guy comes over to me and goes, "I just want to tell you, you're the worst broadcaster in the history of Hockey Night in Canada." Don Whitman looks at me, and I look at him, and I went, "Well, thanks for watching." And I walked away.
That's the way to respond to haters, I got to say. Whether on social media or in person, I guess that's your memory of the Saddle Dome until you ever go back there.
Exactly. And then thankfully, Malcolm and Greg Jameson brought me back one more time. And then the last time, we all know that's been well documented. But yeah, I love the San Jose Sharks. I love the Bay Area. I love the people that we've become friends with in the Bay Area. And for some reason, the fans have really liked me a lot. And I don't know why, and I don't question it.
So it's not to, totally talk down upon your time in Edmonton. I know there must have been high and low points,
yeah,
and the soap opera that is, Northern Alberta. Like seriously, that franchise, it's gone through a lot. But I'm wondering if you could identify either a personal high point while you were there covering the Oilers, or something you enjoyed being a part of, or witnessing, or covering. What's the one thing?
It was a couple. Obviously, get to watch Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl every day and do what they do and see them become the players they become was amazing. See them make the playoffs that year was fantastic. Mm-hmm. Don't get me wrong. There's great people in Edmonton. The fans, though, I wasn't their favorite broadcaster. I probably shouldn't tell this story. I will.
Here we go.
Okay, so Kevin Quinn, I'll tell you about. Let me go first.
All right.
About the great thing there. Kevin Quinn and I talked to the great play-by-play guy for the Edmonton Oilers and carried the water so many years for that franchise. After Sportsnet said thanks, but no thanks, 9 days before the season started, they said, Kevin and I talked, and Kevin said to me, he goes, "You know what? Whatever happens, I hope you're able to somehow join the Sharks again or do something, because you never should have left there. I'm sorry you ever had to come to Edmonton." And I said, I'm not at all. The reason I'm not is for 2 reasons. Number one, I got to meet and work with you, Kevin, and Gene Principe, 2 guys who, Brody.
Gene's a beauty. I can speak on that one.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Just they're 2 guys I absolutely love.
Yeah.
Just wonderful, wonderful people and great broadcasters.
Yeah.
So got 2 great friends there now. And the other part is, it really made me appreciate the one, how much fans really, really, really care about their teams.
Mm-hmm.
But the other part is, Kevin and I we lived downtown right by the rink, and Kevin and I would walk home all the time downtown. We always walked by these bars. It used to astound Kevin how many people would just come straight up to me and just say, Remenda, you suck. Remenda, you're terrible. I had one guy come up to me as Kevin and I are walking. He comes out of the bar, stumbling out of the bar, and he goes, Remenda. And I looked at him and I go, you make me want to hurt myself listening to you. And I went, well, don't let me stop you.
Imagine that, somebody leaving the establishment just because they saw you, to walk all the way outside. So I imagine you are not the Prince of White Avenue.
I am not the Prince of White Avenue. I'm not even the Prince of Third Avenue. I'll tell you that right now. But you know what? Honestly, but also here's the other thing. It makes you appreciate the passion.
Yeah.
Like people work hard for their money in Northern Alberta. I mean, they pay a lot of money to go see an Oiler game or even watch the game. And they're going to let you know one way or the other what they think of you and the job you're doing. But also it's a lot of times there's a lot of shoot the messenger because the team's the way it is.
Yeah. No, I know it's a difficult environment to succeed in, and especially too, I mean, you know, your history with the Sharks is so different, being around since really the start of the franchise. Like you have a foundation with it, whereas in Edmonton, I mean, there's a lot of people who would just look at you and take it from face value. Here's a new face on the screen. Who's this
interloper
guy? You know?
Interloper. There were times, apparently, of course, because I'm not on social media, so I didn't know about it.
Not anymore. Not anymore.
No. Oh, the one I was on for like 2 weeks. It's the longest 2 weeks of my life. So there was the times when the Sharks played. Apparently, when the Sharks were playing the Oilers, and I'm broadcasting in the Oiler games, apparently my kinship to the Sharks came through. And that would apparently tick some people off.
It's like, that McDavid, he's a good passer, but he's no Joe Thornton, you know?
Oh. Hey, listen, somebody the other night said on the air that Leon was becoming as pure a passer as Joe Thornton. And my son Donovan and I were watching, and we both went, well, I can't say what we said, but it was like, come on.
Right.
We're talking about a guy who's had a couple of good years back, throwing a backhand pass, and then Joe Thornton, for crying out loud.
Well, Draisaitl could make Connor McDavid look good, but Joe Thornton could make pretty much Joe Thornton could make me look good out there, right? That's the point. So, hey, I do want to talk a couple Sharks topics here with you, and one kind of going back to several years ago when obviously you were in different, space and place and job situation, but 2016 when the Sharks did go to the Stanley Cup final, just couldn't get it done against Pittsburgh. It was a magical run kind of up until that point. Your takeaway from that series, if there was one thing that you recall or that sits with you, where did the Sharks fall short against Pittsburgh? What was the one thing that held them back from the ultimate prize?
Wow, geez, that's a good question. I would look at it overall and probably just say that Pittsburgh was just a little bit quicker.
Yeah.
And Paul Maurice the other day from the Winnipeg Jets had a great explanation about teams and how they look and the difference between how you're playing, say, the Toronto Maple Leafs versus the Calgary Flames versus the Edmonton Oilers because of the new Northern Division.
Yeah.
And Todd McClellan used to have a saying, think quick, not fast.
Mm-hmm.
Because quick gets you to pucks first. Quick gets you inside position first. Quick gets you off the boards into a scoring position first.
Mm-hmm.
Quick puts the other team on their heels. Quick dictates the game. Like there's fast, but it takes you that 1, 2, 3 steps to get fast.
Right.
Pittsburgh was just a little bit quicker.
Yeah.
And it's a matter too of kind of pushing the pace. Like if the pass goes to you on the wing and I'm the weak side winger, if I want to push the pace and play a quick game, I'm going to come across the ice. So you've got that 5-foot pass.
Mm-hmm.
I think when you look at that series, and it reminded me of Detroit back in the 90s when they were just so good that they were the masters of the 10-foot pass.
Yeah.
And I think that Pittsburgh was in that series as well. they were just like that much.
And
that's all it takes.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And it's kind of a loaded question I asked because, I mean, the takeaways that I remember are twofold. One was that when there was a loose puck in front of the San Jose net, they would, and you talk about quick, they were so quick to crash, to flurry, they made it so difficult on Martin Jones that their scoring chance was imminent and they were going to capitalize on it. And the other thing, too, was they did such a good job at sealing off the point shots. Brent Burns in the prior 3 rounds was able to find Pavelski so often, whether it's a tip or rebound or even Burnsy getting a shot through, and they kind of suffocated the point shots for San Jose, which at that time, it felt like all the offense was running through the points, and it still kind of is that way in a lot of regards. But anyway, those are the things that I think, if I could look back, like what's that one thing that we could change that would, obviously have us with a Stanley Cup banner. But So let me ask you this. Does Grandpa Drew Remenda still have an edge, or have you softened a bit?
I got to tell you, I'm smitten, man. I am crazy in love. You know what's great about being a grandpa? Well, besides, you can give your granddaughter back.
You can sleep at night?
Mom.
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
Well, Jordan, it's funny. Jordan sent a video this morning of the 2 a.m. party baby. She's just having a great time. So my little Rose, as I call her, Rosalind.
Yeah.
The great thing about being a grandfather, for us anyway, is we've seen our daughter become the person we always hoped she'd be.
Yeah.
We've seen her now mature and care about somebody besides herself. We've seen her turn a corner in her life that there were times, frankly, when we didn't know it was going to happen.
Yeah.
And we've seen her be this person that we're so proud of.
Yeah.
And besides, like every grandfather, Roz is perfect. She's just wonderful. The funny part is they don't live in the same city or the same province as us, so it's been tough to go back and forth and see her. But when Roz came for a visit, we talked about having a dog and the kids and everything else. I've got a dog too. His name's George. He's a bulldog.
Looks just like you.
He does. Well, no, I've got more wrinkles.
Both have smushy faces.
Okay. Speaking of that, so taking George for a walk. Okay, I take him for a walk. Neighbor comes out. Nice neighbors here. And he
Canadian.
says, "Hey, yeah." He says, "Hey, Drew, you ever notice those couples that the dog and the owner start looking alike?" I would say, "You know what?" I said a few other things. I said, George is way better looking. But anyway, when they came here and Rosalind would cry, George would lose his mind because, of course, Grandpa's coming over and I'm picking her up. But George was not a happy guy about it. But do I have an edge? Yes, I still have an edge.
Okay, all right.
I still get a little passionate when it comes to certain things in hockey. I've tried not to be such a jerk about it.
Good luck with that.
Yeah. You know what the thing is? The great thing about being fired, I'm sorry, not having your contract renewed.
Right.
Is there, it's like the sevens. It's like when I lost my hair, and it's like the stages of grief. Okay. There's denial, first of all.
Right.
And if you go back and look at my first year pictures with the Sharks, you'll understand what that's
comb
all
over.
about.
Yeah, a little comb over.
Well, I like to refer to it as the skullet. So that was what I had to go for a couple of years.
Well, I'm not one to speak on hair topics right now, but proceed. Proceed.
I'm jealous as can be. Then there's anger, and then there's finally acceptance.
Acceptance,
yeah. You look back and you think of some of the things that while the game was going on, what I used to say. Like, I remember one play against Colorado in the playoffs when a certain defenseman wasn't where he was supposed to be. And I said, I have no idea. I remember the quote. I have no idea what he's doing right there. I have no idea why he's standing there. He's guarding air. Well, my phone went off like that. In fact, you were there at that game because
I remember after the game. Yeah, you tried to walk home from the rink. I remember that.
I did walk home from the rink.
Yeah, you were not very happy in Denver.
No, and we won the series, won the game. Win the series.
Randy's happy. Bakes is happy. Ruzzi's happy. Drew's over there kicking the tires of the bus.
Yeah.
What's wrong with this guy? We won.
I've tried to.
Got it.
You would think at my
Advanced
age.
day. Oh, look at that. Thinking
You would
alike.
think, okay, yeah, we think. I think I've calmed down. The key phrase to me right now, and I had a producer say this to me when I went off on the Oilers one day on the panel about how bad they were in the first period. Like, Brody, one of the all-time great rants, okay? On air. And I had the producer finally say in my ear after the game, he goes, "Hey, Drew, great rant and everything else, but what's it to you if they're playing like that?" And I thought about, I think about that a lot now, and I go, yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
What's it to me? My job's just to describe it. So
there's a balance there. People want the passion that you're feeling, and because they feel it too. But I understand too. Sometimes the separation's nice. All right, I'm sorry. I went back on the personal level. I meant to hit.
Okay.
I meant to hit you on more of a couple team topics. Obviously it's been an interesting start to this season, particularly. Let's just say it like this: the Sharks are not in a playoff position right now.
No.
They've gone through some challenges. They've gone through, some excruciating circumstances from a personal perspective. But what thing or things could you identify right now that would help them get into said playoff position?
Their defensive structure, even though they've allowed the second most goals against per game. Their defensive structure, you can see what Bob Boughner is trying to institute. I have seen Brent Burns play a more controlled game than I think I've seen him in the last number of years, maybe ever. He's trying to be alert, aware defensively. He's trying to play within what Bob wants. And that's not Brent. Brent just goes. The chaos that he creates is both good and bad. But you can see the team, their defensive structure, what Bob's trying to get them to understand and get them to do game in, game out. So that's number one, that they have to keep building on that. The problem is, but this week has been a bonus because of the cancellations.
Get to reset.
Exactly. But in a truncated season and in a season where you don't have a lot of time to work on things, you have to rely on video, and you're not able to work on it on the ice. But you can see what Bob's trying to do there. Their power play and penalty kill, if you combine it, and this used to be Darryl Sutter's thing, if you combine the power play and penalty kill numbers,
100%.
Right. And they're a little bit over 100%.
Yeah.
They get a lot of shots on the power play. They get a lot of chances on the power play. They need to get some finish on the power play. That's number two. This team is going to have to be able to win and get themselves in a position to hopefully contend for a playoff spot by structure, especially in the defensive zone, or especially away from the puck. Shouldn't say defensive zone. Structure, away from the puck, and special teams. That's the two areas where you can really have an influence as a coach and really have your team buy into what you think is going to make it so you can win games. And you can see that that's happening.
Yeah.
The other things are, when you look at the team, you see some positives. You've got some quickness. You've got some guys who can get up and down the ice. Their third and fourth lines can get up and down the ice, and they can create some problems. If they could grab an identity where they are just that pain in the rear end line to play against, where they can go out and shift momentum by getting pucks deep, getting in on teams, closing time and space, making it very difficult for the opposition to move the puck north. That could be something where that they'd really, that's where you can probably swing momentum. The other thing, though, is you have to be able to have your best players really pull on the rope. They got to lead by example every single night, and that's a lot to ask of the guys.
Yeah,
it's a lot to ask of Evander Kane and Logan Couture and Carlson and Brent Burns. It's a lot to ask of those guys, but they have to be their best for 50 whatever games they've got left. They have to, or else you're not going to win. And this goes as no surprise. Goaltending, man.
Yeah.
You can't always look at the save percentage and go, they're bad. You can't even look at the goalies and go, well, they should have stopped that one. Where are the chances originating? how many grade A chances are you giving up?
Yep.
But also, some of those grade A chances, you got to stop.
Yes.
You got to give me that save.
Yep.
So,
no, that's perfect. My next question was going to be what you were just bringing up there, goaltending versus team defense issue. And it's not to say that, let's look at last season, that Aaron Dell or Martin Jones were perfect. I think they would tell you themselves they would have liked to have been better. But that is the question for me. How many grade A chances can you ask your goalie to save every single night? Because if the number is like 6 or 7, you're hanging in there.
Exactly.
But if the number is like 13 or 14, the odds are not good. And to me, like in baseball, there's an earned run average. A pitcher doesn't get runs counted against his earned run average if the defense behind him is making errors. But in hockey, the goals against and the save percentage, they don't factor in, well, you gave player X 3 chances, point blank range, like it just doesn't factor in. So, and I know there are other stats, high danger chances, all that stuff, but I totally agree that it's not to take goaltending out of the conversation, but it's also to include team defense as maybe the root issue. And let me just ask you this, on the note of that, people a lot of times identify the blue line as being the weak link defensively, but to me, it's like there's 3 forwards constantly out there too, which are part of the equation, helping out. And I'm not here to throw anybody else under the bus, just to say that when you talk about team defense, I'm not talking about defensemen only, right?
No, and we're not talking about just playing in your own zone.
Right.
Team defense starts when you don't have the puck.
Right.
Nobody says you can't play defense in the offensive zone.
Right.
By having a good forecheck play, by making sure in the neutral zone when you're coming back, that third man comes back through the neutral zone and allows your defenseman to stand up. If your forwards are coming back hard, then my defenseman can contest the blue line and don't have to back up and give up their zone. Team defense is exactly that. Team defense.
Yeah.
We often know when we're talking about, well, defensively they're not very good. You look at the 6 guys who are playing on your blue line. But you're 100% right. And that's why when you look at the good teams, you take care of the puck, and when you don't have it, you pressure to get it back. You talk about time and space. One of the things that the Ducks are pretty good at, I just watched the Ducks the last couple of games, is they're really good at taking away time and space. But they haven't scored very many goals.
Right.
And you look at, say, the Boston Bruins or the Vegas Golden Knights or the way that Tampa played last year in the playoffs. Their team defense starts as soon as they lose the puck. And then their offense starts as soon as they get it back because they're working their tail off to get it back. It was fun to watch the Tampa Bay during the playoffs. It was funny. You remember the great Jay Woodcroft, right?
Yeah,
Jay
absolutely.
coaches now in Bakersfield and such a great guy. And Jay's always kind of testing me. So during the playoffs last year, the last playoff, Jay said, okay, this is what I want. I want you to watch the finals and then send me a report of both teams. Everything you can imagine about scouting and everything else. Because, you never know where your next job's coming from, right?
Sure.
So I did that. Sent it to him at the end. Came back with his estimation of how I did and what I was looking at and how I was seeing everything. But we both agreed on the fact that both Tampa and Dallas, when they had lost the puck, how hard they would work and how quickly they would work at trying to get it back.
Yeah.
And that's the key to team defense.
I've already overused you on time that I asked for, so I only have
like I've got things to do. Please.
So I only have one more thing. Actually, I only have one more thing. But I think going back to identity as a whole, and to sum up the Sharks right now, what they might have had in seasons of the 2010s when they were a definite playoff team and they were a definite postseason contender, and they'd have the chance to make runs. And the difference between then and now is maybe they had a certain identity back then, and I don't mean their identity was winning, but you knew how they could win games. Right. You knew their style, and I don't know right now that there is a specific calling card that this team has. Am I right about that? Am I wrong about that? Can they develop a calling card that would, be their kind of staple of how to get results that they want?
I had to look this up because I asked a bunch of coaches in the National Hockey League about a year ago, less than a year ago, what is team identity? What does it mean? and this is the best quote I got. It's a physical, mental, and structural style the group of players believes in and prepares, practices, and plays towards, which I think is the best definition of a team identity.
Yeah.
And when you bring new guys in, when you're in a shift as far as your team goes, which is definitely what's happening with the San Jose Sharks, you are going to have to make sure that those people that come in and they're new to your team understand what your identity is. Now you got new coaches.
Right.
Well, Bobby was there for a while, but you've got basically a new coaching staff.
Right.
You've got a bunch of young players and new players coming in. So it's up to Brent Burns, Logan Couture, Mark-Edouard Vlasic, guys that have been there for a while to really bring to the forefront what a team identity is. Now, you had the luxury years ago to have Joe Thornton, Patty Marleau.
Well, Patty's still around. I don't know if you knew that.
That's right. Yes, I'm sorry. The great Patty Marleau was still around. Joe Pavelski, Logan.
Yeah.
When Logan came in, he had those guys. When Patrick Marleau came in, he had Mike Vernon. He lived with Kelly Rudy and all those guys. You have to be able to hand that down. And I think you're right that I don't think the Sharks have quite figured it out yet, who they are, how they have to play, and what they have to do to prepare that to play that way every single day.
Yeah.
Now, again, you talked about the what they've had to do though for the first little while of this season.
Very difficult. A month straight. You know, human beings are not designed to be on the road that long, and to even and they're still going back out on the road for a handful more games.
Yeah.
But I think, it's not to make an excuse for 3 wins and only 1 in regulation in their first 8 games, but to just get through that and to now have this fortunate week for them to reset and now to go into some different style of opponents in their next 6 games. Look, when I mentioned the calling card, I wasn't saying that they're not capable of that. I'm just saying that the sooner they can get to something like that, going to be much better off.
100%. And being at home and being a little bit more stable and everything, knowing what's going to be happening in the future will give their top players that chance to say, okay, this is who we need to become.
Yeah. Hey, I'll let you go, and I'll just say this. Be a little bit more casual when you join us for the studio shows. You don't need a tie. You really don't even need a suit. T-shirt and jeans, maybe?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, for sure. Hey, Brody, there's this thing called Center Ice where you actually get to watch.
You're watching us?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Trust me, big boy. Hey, we're bringing it. Friday night, we're bringing it.
You're going to outdo the rest of the people on television from your own home. So
yes, and I'll be wearing pants. I will guarantee you my pants will match. It's not going to be just like the guy in that commercial, the Folgers commercial, where he's got his underwear on.
I had to check to make sure I was wearing pants still right now. Sometimes I just forget. Waist up. Let's go. Hit record. Drew, appreciate this. See you soon on TV and a couple times this season. Looking forward to it.
Me too, buddy. Good seeing you.